This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to our viewers from around the world joining CNN's continuous coverage. We do have breaking news in the investigation here in Boston of the marathon attacks. I'm joined by Juliette Kayyem and John King. John, let's just get right into it. What is the latest?
We are told, Chris, Fran Townsend has a federal source. I have a Boston law enforcement source saying that an arrest has been made. Now, that is a dramatic breakthrough. We're waiting for more information. I was told earlier this morning that an operation was underway after they had clearly identified a suspect. The breakthrough came, remember, just last night we were talking about how much progress they had made in the how and exactly when, but they hadn't gotten to the who. I'm told that based on a video camera, Lord & Taylor department store is just a few blocks from here, that based on a video camera from that store fixed on the location of the second bombing, directly across the street essentially from the second bombing, that they finally got what they were looking for. Video analysis showing an individual, a male I'm told, showing up and placing the black bag with the explosive device in it. And then because of the video enhancement technology, mostly from the department store, I'm told some video from a Boston television station also contributed to this. They clearly identified a suspect, a single suspect, and now we are told from sources that an arrest has been made, a briefing scheduled for later this evening. Obviously still a lot of questions.
So let's reset here chronologically. So do we know at what point they wound up identifying somebody? Do we know what time window, what horizon we're within?
I don't know exactly the time window. I can tell you that I was on as late as just before 10 o'clock last night with Anderson Cooper, and just an hour or so before that I had talked to a Boston source who said we're stymied at the moment. We're doing a great job with the forensics. We know how these bombs worked. We know about their power. We have a very good idea of the timing, obviously, because of all the video. As to the who part, this source said they were stymied. So clearly, from yesterday evening into the overnight hours in analyzing this additional video. They were all day yesterday. They were canvassing through the neighborhoods. Remember, it's just a holiday. The stores were closed and the like on Monday when this took place. So they're going in and saying, what do you got? What do you got? And then having to look at reams of evidence and so many millions of frames of video. And finally, they got what they were looking for.
Now, Fran, to help us clarify this, Fran Townsend, just to take this half step back. They're looking at video. They've been asking everybody call 1-800-FBI, and they get video from Lord & Taylor. They look at it. They see somebody who puts down a bag that approximates what they believe was holding the bomb. They identify him as a brown-skinned individual. Then through what, Fran, do they wind up figuring out who that man is in the video and arresting? All right.
They've made some progress on the videos they have. They have more videos on this one than any other case the FBI ever had, especially across from Lord & Taylor's with the...
He's going to leave town today because it was vacation, and he said, yeah, leave town. This is, this is going to be a long story. So something good happened between midnight and essentially noon today.
But help me clarify this part, though, Juliette. Help me clarify this, because it's going to be confusing for folks watching us right now. They see somebody on the video.
Yes.
They say, look what he just did. That's our guy. How do we go from that to arrest?
Okay, so we don't know who this individual is, so I'm going to be cautious, but just this is generic law enforcement 101. That person may have already been known to either federal, state, or local law enforcement for a variety of reasons. That person might have been part of a community of which they were already known to that community, and people had already come forward and said, hey, since Monday, we haven't seen this guy. Now, we are being very cautious and speculative at this stage, but people are known to law enforcement for a lot of reasons, including prior arrests. So the law enforcement has a lot of pictures of us for passports and all sorts of other reasons if they are on a search like this. So that's generic. How would you find this person? Now, determining where he is, if they in fact have him, would have just been following a lot of clues that they were getting in. See, what we don't know from the outside is they may have been getting a lot of not just eyewitness tips about what was happening here, but hey, there was someone who used to live here who doesn't live here anymore. Hey, there's some guy in hiding over here. They're getting all sorts of stuff. So I want to just say, if all of this unfolds as quickly as we think at 5 o'clock today with an announcement, it's been a long 2 days, but that's pretty remarkable.
But also know this. Keeping a calm mind as we go through this. Everybody wants to know who did this. It's so terrible. It's so wrong. However, an arrest does not mean guilt necessarily.
They are. Let me just tell you, though, on a high-profile case like this, they are not going to make this big of a mistake without sufficient evidence that this is this guy. It has happened before. I agree with you, but let me just say there is a certain, because it has happened before, a lot of lessons have been learned about how we're going to go forward, how the government is going to go forward in these cases. Now, who he is and who I always say this, who he thinks he is. In other words, people may be part of a group, or they may think that they're part of a group, right? His affiliation to either domestic or international folks or organizations will have to be shown in court.
Important point. We're hearing about one individual right now, one arrest, no understanding really, even though this vague description of brown skin, whether foreign or domestic, whether they're part of an organization or a lone wolf. We don't know any of that, correct, John?
Right. The sources I talked to this morning would not go there when I asked about motive, and they essentially shut down the questioning when I was saying, so you have one individual suspect. Are there other suspects? I was essentially told we have one person in focus. That's our focus right now. We're going to try to apprehend that suspect that they did concede. They had clearly identified. We are now told an arrest has been made, but these are all great questions, including the point about, you know, they say, and these are from reputable sources, Franz or federal sources. I have a Boston law enforcement source and someone who has been briefed in detail on the investigation who says the enhanced video analysis is indisputable of an individual showing up and placing the bag. But you make a key point. An arrest leads to what we believe will be a criminal prosecution, which opens up a whole host of questions.
And can I say on that point, that is why the last couple of days when we've been talking about the response...
Hold on one second, Julia. Just in terms of understanding where we are, according to the AP, the suspect has been taken by U.S. Marshals to a federal courthouse. Okay, that's obvious procedure. This is a federal crime. It's being done by federal agencies. Federal Marshals would be the right service agent for this suspect. And taking them to the courthouse. Well, they're following the steps. That's not unanticipated. Continue your point.
So on the evidentiary point, we've been talking about this. So a lot of compliments for the response at the marathon, which was sort of, you know, obviously a shock to everyone. The reason why is because the government now has to build a case against this individual. And the best case is going to be evidence. It's going to be the sort of visual evidence of who he was and did he put this bomb down or this explosive down, but also all this material over here. So that's why it's been so pristine. That's why it was so important to get all those runners off.
And interestingly, this morning, very early, 2:30, that site of the second explosion, lots of people in white jumpsuits walking around the mailbox, much busier than the other location.
Which would lead you to believe that they circled back after seeing something in the investigation. I also want to make clear, Chris, you know, we're saying, we know, Fran has a federal source saying his arrest has been made. I have a Boston law enforcement source saying, you know, that operation was underway, heading toward an arrest, and believe that would be. As always, there's some conflicting information about this, and one of our justice producers is saying he's hearing information that there's not an arrest yet, an apprehension, an arrest, Miranda rights being processed. These can all mean different things to different people in the cloud of this, but I am told by a Boston law enforcement source that they believe that they have the suspect.
To reset it for everybody with Anderson Cooper here now, word of an arrest here in the Boston Marathon attacks. We have heard that U.S. federal marshals have taken this suspect to the courthouse. That would be obvious procedure in a federal investigation. We believe it all started with videotape that they were analyzing from a store across the street from the second explosion. We believe it was a Lord & Taylor. A man was identified putting down something that officials believe approximated the type of bag that was holding what they thought was an explosive device in one of these that we've been showing you all morning, one of these pressure cookers, and they found him. We're not exactly sure. We're not knowing what the procedure was, what they cross-referenced to find this particular individual. Juliet and John were saying may have been a known person or some other device, but now in custody.
And also, John, it wasn't just the one video. We believe there was a second video that authorities were also using, correct?
I was told by the source who had been briefed on the investigation that the major breakthrough came from the department store, Lord & Taylor, which is very close to the second explosion location. They said they had a very clear image of a suspect making the drop. It was the way it was described to me, making the placement of the black bag and then backing away and leaving the site. But I was told that some additional video provided to authorities by a Boston television station, which was doing some live reporting and other taping, we used to call it filming in the old days, taping in the area, had also provided some video that was very useful as part of that enhanced video analysis. So I was told the department store was the key element, but that there was some additional video provided by a Boston television station, and then they enhance it, and that technology has improved so dramatically in recent years, in part because of post 9/11 investigations and other criminal investigations, that they said they were able to get in to a very close image to clearly identify a suspect.
Do we know at what hour he was actually arrested? Because I saw an email from you earlier this morning, really saying you had a source who was saying there had been significant developments.
Significant developments, and then the effort was to actually apprehend the suspect. We knew the suspect and clearly identified. And I want to tell you, as we have at this hour, the Associated Press, another news organization, is reporting a suspect has been brought to the courthouse. We have some other sources saying there may be an operation underway, but questioning whether an actual arrest has been made. Fran Townsend, who has excellent sources in federal law enforcement and national security issues, is told by a federal source an arrest has been made. I was told by a Boston law enforcement source we got him. So there's a... Yeah, so
you need an abundance of caution here, because there couldn't be a more prejudicial arrest to have on you right now than this one. When this man's face is seen, when his name gets out, and that's a whole issue. Do we report the name or not? You have to get this right.
The other question is there more than one suspect? Was more than one person? The fact that a timing device was involved, though, could very easily be one person.
And the question is there one person who did this? And this is the actual make and a model of that pressure cooker that recovered. Is there one person who did this completely on their own? Was there someone else who knew? Was somehow part of maybe the education, if you will? So those are the questions that law enforcement will ask. When I asked my sources this morning, I was told we have one suspect. We are focused on him. We have a breakthrough in the investigation. That is where we're going. They just shut down. They didn't say yes or no to whether there could have been anyone else. They just essentially shut down the questioning. And when I tried to ask about motive, essentially they said, we're at a point in the investigation. We want to get the suspect, talk to the suspect, and then we'll deal with those questions.
I've also been told single arrest, and that it happened very quickly, which we were talking about before, trying to figure out how that's possible.
Well, we were just talking about last night, Julia, this potentially being something that goes on for months and months. When you looked at the Atlantic Park bombing, the Olympic Park bombing, back in the mid-90s, that was something which, I mean, was
right, and that was the remarkable part of the press. I mean, think about the press conference yesterday at 5, where we were all remarking, and I think they did this in a good way. Was, look, we need your pictures, we need this film. The media apparently was the second sort of visual that got this guy, and so that all coming together was both a unique way, but a really interesting way in which they were sort of engaging the public in helping us find, or helping them find, whoever it is who they have today.
Also, if they're able, the fact that they were able to sort of realize this was not a device which could have been set a day or two in advance.
Right, that was always...
and this was not a device which could have been laying out there for many hours. So, it allowed them to kind of whittle down the actual hour that they were looking at.
And one of their operating assumptions was that this is someone who worked out. They knew you have dignitaries, a lot more focus on the finish line when the elite runners were crossing, and then there's sort of a changing of the crowd, if you will. People who are your average marathon runners who finish in 4 hours or so, everyday people, and you have some of the families who are around at that point.
The largest
number of people crossing. The elite runners are gone. A lot of the dignitaries are gone, and the Boston police and the others are saying that their security operations do not lapse. However, there is a changing of the crowd.
We should let our viewers know you're looking at live aerials of the courthouse. We're looking for,
from here.
We're looking for obviously any kind of movement if the suspect has in fact been brought there.
Right. I mean, I think John and I, we've been talking sort of all week about sort of what happened at that finish line, and we got hints yesterday that they clearly believed then, and it's confirmed by this device, that someone has been here for some time. Who knows, a week, maybe they lived here, put the device together, walked it over, knew the marathon pretty well, knew when it got porous, because as John was saying, it's very tight with those elite runners, and then family members of sort of the average runners come forward and place them there. So that we sort of knew that this was a Boston story. Who knows where this guy's from? Who knows who his affiliates are? But this has been, and the investigation was essentially probably all done here.
Why did the device have to have been put there so recently?
You wouldn't transport.
Notwithstanding the video and what they saw.
You wouldn't,
okay,
you would
I'm
not
told we're
transport
right.
something.
Fran says we're right. I'll double back.
Not sophisticated, but it's also, a device that could explode relatively easily. If you wanted to transport, first of all, you would never put it on an airplane. If you couldn't get it onto an airplane. If you wanted to transport it, even in a car, the shaking could detonate it. This was not a suicide bomber. It's not a suicide bomber. It was a sort of cowardly.
You also have
bomber.
a highly secured area where dignitaries are going to be, and so there are security sweeps in the days even on that day, and so it has to be in the last several hours.
I mean, I used to do security when I worked for the governor for the Boston Marathon, and so people have been talking a lot about bags. There were so many bags. Anyone who's seen a marathon, there are lots of bags, right? And so the chances are nothing was left well before the marathon, but someone was easily dropped a bag during it.
Julia, we have Deb Farrick on the phone. Is that true?
No.
Yes. Deb, if you can hear me, you spoke to a photographer who was near the suspect. Tell me the situation. I'm not hearing Deb right now.
Hello?
Yeah, Deborah, can you hear us? Deborah, can you hear us? It's Chris.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone. The picture that you are probably showing on air right now is of a man who seems to be running from the location. And what makes this picture so interesting and why the FBI has been asking